everybody, and welcome back to Diving Into DuckTales. I am your host, Zenith, and we are here to talk about the latest in the new DuckTales series episodes. We have been talking about this series for quite a while, and we're nearing the end of Season 1, and today we have an interesting episode to discuss. But before we do that, how's it going, Kat?
Dewey tonight, Dewey tonight, Dewey tonight. I'm doing good. I'm all excited for this one. Well, not really. I'm kind of terrified, but at the same time, this was a fun episode, and I look forward to talking about it.
And, Mr. Doug, how's it hanging, my home slice?
I'm good. Want to be my friend? I have a special friend present.
Oh, God.
Doug, I'm just gonna leave that over there. This episode is both a very fun one, but also somewhat creepy in parts. But honestly, this is continuing the streak of great episodes. I really did like this episode, especially because of what they do with this episode and the way they structure it. And honestly, it gives us a lot more insight into each individual character than we normally get. With that being said, Kat, why don't you give us a brief summary of this episode?
Brief summary. There's like 3 different things going on in this episode. Like, I don't know if I could possibly, summarize it. Like, this was an interesting setup. Like, this is, what do you call this? Like, a trilogy type thing? What do you call that, Doug?
Like an anthology?
Anthology, that's what it is. Yeah, this was an anthology of things. Boy, I guess we should start with the overall plot. Is that suddenly the 3 brothers are no longer brothers. They're all only children. At least according to Dewey. So yeah, Webby comes across Dewey, who suddenly acts like he doesn't have any siblings. So naturally, being in a world where, mystical elements happen and everything, she's like, are we in another dimension? But that's not the case at all. It turns out that they actually have a holiday that they all celebrate once a year in which they all pretend to be only children and go off and do their own thing. Which, is fair. I mean, they're triplets. They're together all the time, so it makes sense they'd all want, time to themselves. So pretty much this episode just follows each of the individual boys and what they do on their day off as only children. And pretty much their stories get really crazy and eventually converge together at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm. That actually sounds like a very good idea. I mean, if I didn't have to worry about Doug barging in on the podcast every single time.
What do you mean I'm barging in on the podcast?
You know what, Doug? You're fired. We're gonna be doing it my way. This is the Zenith podcast. We're now talking about DuckTales. It's just me. You're both fired.
Why am I fired? What did I do?
Hey.
And besides, we always do things your way.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna start my own podcast with blackjack and hookers.
Well, fine then.
Yeah.
Stop fighting!
Well, anyway, let's talk about the Huey portion of the episode, because there's nobody else on this podcast besides me, and I want to talk about the smart, intelligent person on the podcast. I mean, in the episode, I should say. So, let's talk about Huey's portion of the episode. Huey has a very interesting segment. In fact, I think it's probably one of my favorite segments, because essentially he's working for his woodchuck badge. Basically, he has to have a badge for him working with 2 other people to get, I think it's either working together merit badge or something like that. Basically, it's something that he needs 3 people to do. But now he is an only child, so that kind of becomes hard. Until he gets almost kidnapped by the Beagle Boys. the Beagle Boys are posing as Junior Woodchucks, and he can see right through their disguises, but, he's just like, certain death or merit badge, and I want to get the merit badge. And you know what? I can kind of understand, because I was a Boy Scout back when I was a boy, and like, getting a merit badge is important. It's a status symbol, so you kind of wanna like, feel important, and it's something as a kid that, as an adult I can see that it's kind of silly, but as a kid that's like one of the major things that you want to get. So he works together with the two Beagle Boys, and they eventually turn on big time because he teaches them all these relevant skills and is actually nice to them. So they turn on big time, but unfortunately they do that in an evil manner by kidnapping Big Time, tying Big Time to the top of a tree where he's about to fall to his death, and instead of saving him by climbing the tree and untying him, they chop down the tree. And that's how the segment ends. We'll talk about how we feel about that later. I'm feeling a little bit lazy right now. Let's move on to the other podcast.
Hello, I'm Doug Macberrie, the sole heir of the Disney Debate 2 podcast that doesn't feature any fat Zens. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about Louie's portion of The Only Child Day. So, yeah, Louie has decided that he wants to, befriend this really rich, only, single heir as well, and, try to be, single heir buddies. And, yeah, so it's actually a character from the old DuckTales series named Doofus Drake. So yeah, this doofus though is incredibly different from what we knew in the '87 DuckTales. In this case, he's a lot more greedy. Just kind of like really creepy. I mean, like the other doofus was like really sweet and but kind of a dunce and Launchpad's like biggest fan. This one is like, oh boy, money changes people, I tell you. So yeah, Louie goes to meet up with him, and he has like this really kick-ass house above the actual house, which are apparently now referred to as the servant quarters. And the servants are like, oh, we can't ever say no to Doofus. Never. And it's like, so Louie meets up with Doofus. Doofus is kind of like not really all paying attention to him because he's busy drinking from ice cream, and winds up getting like a really bad ice cream headache for a second, to the fact where like he looks all red in the face, and Louie is like trying desperately to leave, but then the brain freeze passes, and Doofus is like, friend! And he gives him like this big gold brass ring as a sign of friendship. So the two of them like are cavorting together, they're, playing around, and then ultimately they wind up going into this like room of all these really expensive things. Like he has like an original golden Stradivarius guitar, and Doofus, like as a way of blowing off steam, he comes in here just to like wreck everything. And so he invites Louie to do the same. And then Louie is like tearing up pictures, but as he's about to tear this one, Doofus like goes and jumps him, because apparently it's a picture of his grandmother who gave him all of the fortune that he has. And then you ultimately also find out that the servants are Doofus's parents. Like he legit, stripped them of whatever status they had and made them into his servants. and Louie's like really creeped out by this, so he's trying to leave, and then it's revealed that the brass thing that Doofus gave him was actually like a magnet. So when Louie tries to leave, Doofus activates it, and Louie is stuck to the ground. And then he like has the servants and Louie put on these pedestals so that nobody can leave. Louis tries to, get in with the parents and try to escape, but the father blows it and reveals Louis is actually a traitor. And all seems lost until a freaking tree breaks through. Right as Doofus is coming in with this bag full, like with a umbrella and some walnuts, and it looks like he's about to do something, but thankfully the tree seems to stop that. And then we see, like, the Beagle Boys and this other duck.
Doug,
I'm really,
what are you doing on my podcast?
I'm really confused. What?
What's going on? Like,
hey,
our podcasts
dude,
are
get
converging.
out of my podcast.
Yeah, come on. Let's see what Kat's doing in her podcast.
Fine.
Interrupt these two podcasts to do a much better podcast, Diving Into DuckTales. and today we have a very special guest. Dewey tonight, Dewey tonight, Yes, let me talk about the best part of the DuckTales segment that the other two were babbling on about. So Dewey apparently has a very big interest in being a talk show host. In fact, he creates a whole sort of mock like version of the late night show, in which he himself is the host, and he has all this cardboard audience, and he has these his own band and his own guests and everything, and he pretty much just is pretty much making this demo show in hopes of pitching it to a network so he can make it big. And yeah, he even has his own Paul Schaefer and what looks like a caveman skeleton, which looks like a character from the original show that I will not mention because he is awful. So yeah, Dewey is like doing his own thing. He's talking to the audience. He's interviewing his guests, which are actually his brothers, quote, that are in the form of a robot and a lamp. But unfortunately, while he's doing this, the new security bot was waiting outside listening to him. But then when he starts getting into a mock battle with his, quote, brothers, the robot believes that he is being attacked. So the robot, in typical DuckTales fashion, goes into evil mode, tears down the door, and is ready to blast Dewey and his toys. At which point Dewey hides in the closet, and he's trying to figure out a plan to deal with this. Unfortunately, he's not that good when it comes to these plans. His brothers are. And he starts to realize that maybe indeed he does miss his brothers after all. Even the robot points it out, strangely enough, by specifically telling him he should be lucky to have siblings, that any particular person would want to have siblings. And oh, hi, Webby. So yeah, Webby, in order to prove a point, broke into the robot and somehow gained control of it in order to prove a point to Dewey. Unfortunately, since this most likely is a gyro robot, messing up with its circuitry automatically turns it evil, and the thing hunts down Webby and Dewey. And Dewey manages to tackle the thing, but he causes it to go haywire. It flies out of the mansion and flies into the next mansion. And oh, hi guys, what's up?
Hey, what are you doing here?
What are you doing in my podcast? You got chocolate in my peanut butter.
I do whatever I want.
Oh, I can't stay mad at you guys. You're rehired.
I love you guys.
Well, what if I don't want to come back?
I have a cat. I can give you a cat.
Okay, you convinced me. I love you guys.
Aww.
Friends.
Come on, big hug.
Big hug.
I can't stay mad at you anyway. I couldn't do the podcast without you guys. You're the best. Besides, I need a title card, and Kat kind of does those.
You're nothing without me.
So yeah, the story converges with all three of them taking on all of the threats at once, and it turns out that each threat is better done in by a different brother, and by switching out the brothers, they can all work together and defeat all three of them and escape the mansion, and thus the episode ends. This episode was very interesting, and we figured from the very beginning that we had to kind of do this episode a different way, simply because this is the first anthology episode that they've done for the show, and it worked really, really well. Kat, what are your thoughts on the anthology format for this particular episode?
I liked it a lot. It actually reminds me of a Simpson episode in which they show the events of a day that happened from Bart, Lisa, and Homer's perspectives, and how they sort of intermingle with each other and eventually converge together at the end. I'm pretty sure they've done it in other mediums as well. Like, this isn't a new thing, but I do like when it's done because, you kind of like fit everything together in a context, and it's an interesting narration point. Plus, it was interesting to see each of the brothers have sort of their own individual segments. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen that. They have gotten their own focus, but usually the others were, like, partially a part of that story, sort of. But, in this case, they had, like, a pure focus on them and what it is that they want to do. And it also highlights, their strengths and weaknesses, as well as how exactly they complement each other. So, yeah, I like this a whole lot.
Yeah, I think, like, for one, it gives us a lot more context to each individual brother, and for like, normally I can pick them apart, but this was the first time, I think, where I was just, like, I understood each person, individually, like, so much better, to the point where, like, okay, so this is how they tick. Huey is the smart one, who also risks his own life just for nerd reasons. We have Dewey, who's just, doing his own thing. And you have Louie, who just kind of fakes it till he makes it. And that's really emphasized in each of their different campaigns. And I liked how it converged. I liked... it just felt like a more complete episode than a lot of the episodes we've seen up until this point, mostly because it gave us time to focus on each individual person. Doug, what are your thoughts on this anthology?
Oh yeah, my thoughts are exactly the same as Kat's. Like, the first thing that came to mind was that the Simpsons episode Trilogy of Error, as Kat said, where they're, like, all doing kind of their different things, but they do kind of intermingle too. So I thought it was clever, but it's like, yeah, it feels like an anthology, which I like anthologies a lot. And yeah, it's also kind of its own standing on its own episode. So I really like that combination. And I do love seeing, each of the brothers kind of, being in their own characters. Also, by the way, I don't think that robot was Gyro's because it's a DT-87 again.
True. Like, I guess in this case we can blame Webby on it malfunctioning. Sorry, it's just a typical thing, evil robot, Gyro, it kind of goes hands in hand.
So let's dive into the first section together. Now that we've made up, let's talk about the Beagle Boys. I, for one, really liked the characterization that the Beagle Boys had this episode. Ultimately, they end up staying evil at the end, but we got a little bit more context for the relationship between Big Time and the rest of the boys, and how he's always abusing and mistreating them, and how they eventually, kind of go over to Huey's side until he tricks them into turning back evil again. Pretty much. I think it was good character realization where they have this kind of mob mentality for them, and if they were given the chance, they could turn good, but they're kind of incompetent at the same time. So having them on the good side isn't always good.
Yeah, like I actually did find their new relationship with Huey kind of endearing because yeah, if they were just treated with some kindness, they probably wouldn't be thieves. You know, they probably would be dedicating their all to whatever, person or cause that, drew their interest. Like the fact that they were able to learn quickly, that they had their own set of skills that weren't acknowledged up to that point, really gives them like an extra layer and dimension. And I really liked that a lot. And I was kind of hoping they would if not both, at least one of them would kind of stay good at the end, because they would be a good asset when you think about it, despite their ineptitude, because, they're the muscle. They get things done. So I mean, granted, they do take it a little too far and try to murder their brother, but, if you channel that dedication in the right direction, it could be theoretically used for good. I do find it interesting how Huey's the only one out of the three of them that actually likes being a triplet. That he actually has, like, crippling loneliness, like, without his brothers. Although at the same time, he kind of wants them to follow him blindly just by virtue of him being the smarter one. But then again, that's kind of an older sibling mentality, and I can understand that, being the oldest out of, like, 7 kids. So, honestly, like, I myself have wanted to be, like, an only child at times, because, younger siblings are a pain. But at the same time, you know that you need them. It does get lonely, so I can really sympathize with Huey on this one. And it was nice to see him, going into Big Brother mode for the Beagles and just giving them that love that they so desperately wanted. So, yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if I can relate as much since I'm a younger sibling, and while I love my sister, I've had moments where I've just kind of wanted to be on my own and do my own thing independently. But, like, I did like that they delved into how, like, the gruel that the big one makes very well was always shoved in his face, and he was always mistreated. And I think that that dynamic was interesting to explore, and I'm kind of wondering if they'll return to that later down the line or not. I'm not sure, because this DuckTales does like to reference past continuity from itself and from the past show. But I hope they bring that back, because there was some really great character development there. Doug, what are your thoughts on the Beagle Boys?
Oh yeah, I really liked that. I liked seeing that different side of them, seeing, what happens when they, depending on who they're with, who treats them, badly, or who treats them nice, kind of, wins their loyalty. And in fact, they wind up being so loyal to Huey that they're willing to take out their own brother. It's like, wow. And they get, like, really into it, and it's kind of scary. But yeah, I definitely liked the dynamic. I liked, seeing them kind of out of their element, and the fact that, Huey is, like, willing to, help them out just so he can get the badge, but, it's like he's so pissed off that they're inept that he really wants to help them. Even though it could mean that they wind up using it against him, but, c'est la vie.
I do love how he's like, if I'm gonna get captured, I'm gonna get captured right.
Yeah.
And then I love how the Beagle Boys are just like, so you want us to kidnap him for you? I'm like, have you learned nothing?
And I can also, like, I can identify with Webby because I was an only child, and now I'm, married into a bunch of siblings. But yes, I was definitely an only child, and I can identify with Webby in that, I always wanted siblings when I was younger because I got really lonely. My parents weren't always around, or they didn't always want to do stuff with me. So it's like I wanted to play a lot of games and stuff, and, have someone to play with. I had friends, but, my parents wouldn't let friends come over a lot because our place was a mess most of the time. But yeah, I mean, I just, kind of wanted that companionship.
Well, now you have all the companionship you could ever want.
Now you have me and Kat and being fired.
What was I thinking?
So that was the first bit. I really, really like what they did with the characters. I mean, honestly, it's more a character piece than anything. But when I first heard the title of this episode having the only sibling day, I figured that this was going to get annoying. But this really served to expand the character for each segment. I really like the first segment. The second segment is kind of weird and interesting. It's like part of me really liked it because it managed to showcase the dark nature of what happens when someone, goes too far with money and what could happen to Louis in the future. And in that regard, it's really good. It showcases some fun elements with them playing around with the concept of being rich, kind of like and say Richie Rich or stuff like that, where they do this kind of dark future thing. But at the same time, Doofus is so creepy. Like, oh my god.
Oh Jesus. Like, like I was worried that they were. I was worried from the get-go because of his mere inclusion, because like I said before, I did not like Doofus, him being the stereotypical fat kid and everything, and his personality traits basically being food, happy-go-lucky, and kissing Launchpad's butt. In this, they disregard all of that, and they did a total 180 on this character. He is like he's not even your typical rich character either. Like, when you think rich characters in TV shows, like, think Richie Bucksaplenty from Fairly Odd Parents, who's, like, supposed to be Timmy's rival in the fact that he just wants to best him at everything, even though he already has everything and, is just basically being a spoiled brat. Or think Pacifica Northwest, who thinks that she's better than everyone because of her family's status and everything, but she eventually realizes that's a bad thing and turns herself around. No, in this case, Doofus is the rich kid who turns villainous because of like his dark nature. Like the fact that money turned him so goddamn evil. Like he enslaved his own parents. They are now his servants and there is nothing they can do about it. And like he captures people who amuse him and he basically treats everyone around him as an object. It is like the scariest fucking shit ever. And then the fact that he's also like he's either not aware or he doesn't care about how he presents himself to people. Like he just like treats them as whatever, and he sniffs people's hair and he like and he uses those bracelets to keep them like in his house, like willfully kidnaps them. Like holy shit. Like I know like when you're rich you can get away with anything, but like this is like the development of like a burgeoning psychopath. Like, dear God. And I just wonder how rich his grandmother was to like afford all this stuff that he splurges on. Like, he turns his home into the fucking like treehouse from Kids Next Door. Like, that's a fucking achievement right there. Like,
and it's a shame because like the treehouse looks pretty damn awesome. But he's like the darkest timeline version of a rich person.
I know, it's like I'm trying to think of what the mindset was, because like I assume the crew must not have liked Doofus as much as we did. Like, and the strange thing is I found that there are some Doofus fans out there, which is weird, but whatever. But I guess like when trying to develop this character, it's like, well, we could do a thing where he is still friends with the boys, but he's like superior and everything. But that would be following every other rich kid trope. Like, let's take it in the total opposite direction as far as we fucking can. Like, make him so antagonistic. Like, I don't know if I like it or not. Like, on the one hand I do because it's so damn different, but on the other hand, it is so fucking creepy. Like, ugh.
I mean, they set out, they accomplished what they set out to do. I will give them that, in the fact that, like, they managed to really give depth more depth than the character originally have, and they managed to showcase what happens when someone gets too much money and how it corrupts them. I've seen this in TV shows before, but this is a very different and much more realistic look at it. On the other hand, I probably don't want to see this segment of the show again because he he creeped me the fuck out. Like, we watched this together when I was down last weekend. You know, I traveled down a lot lately. But yeah, I traveled down for the weekend and we watched the episode, and I needed like a shower after that. Like, just like, I felt like I needed a shower because that was creeping me the hell out. So yeah, Doug, what are your thoughts on that?
So, real quick thing to talk about. We do get confirmation that Duckworth is still in DuckTales, because Louis does bring it up to Doofus's parents. So yeah, good for that. But yeah, it's holy cow. I'm like, yeah, I didn't like Doofus either in either case, you know, either the 87 DuckTales or in this, because it's just like, wow, you are just not, I don't even know what to say. And like some of the things that he does, it's like he'll just kind of be as creepy as possible, either by just like standing there and not talking as he sips ice cream, or he reaches into his pants to grab like the thing that has the ring in it. I'm like, dude, what? The red flag should be all over the place, and Louis is just not seeing them.
Like, to be fair, he does get creeped out at first and wants to leave, but, you know, the draw of money was too strong.
And what the hell is he going to do with that umbrella and those walnuts or chestnuts?
Yeah, I really want to know what... Well, I don't want to know, and I do want to know. It's a weird conundrum. But it's like, what can you do with an umbrella and walnuts? Is he going to shove it up his ass, or what? Like, oh, God. Like, I don't even want to think about it. Like, oh, God. But you know what the weird thing is? This is strangely kind of fitting for the original character. Like, the thing is, Doofus didn't get that much screen time, like, in the original, aside from the time he's shared with Launchpad. The one episode he did get to himself involved him coming across a meteorite that was dropped by aliens, which end up giving him superpowers. So he becomes his own superhero called Superdoo, and he uses it to go around, you know, saving his friends, saving, like, the creatures in the forest, and, you know, trying to be, like, the good guy. Unfortunately, all of the power and his new enhanced abilities go to his head, and he starts becoming a show-off and then starts bullying his fellow woodchucks the way they would make fun of him for being slow due to his, you know, fat guy status. So, like, it gets to the point where, you know, it becomes one of those power corrupts type story, but he realizes through his own actions that, you know, it's not good for him to have these powers, and he willingly gives it up for the sake of his friends. So I'm wondering, you know, if this is the case where he just said fuck it and just went full mad with power. Because either way, it's, like, appropriate. Even if it's like this, even if this one was dumb to the umpteenth degree. Honestly, the enslavement of the parents is what gets to me about that. Because when you see other rich kids in other, like, TV shows, when you see their parents, they're either absent or they're totally oblivious to their kids' like spoiled nature, or they actually indulge in it. In this case, you know, they are straight up victims of it. Because, like, assumably these people were once aristocrats, the same way that, you know, his grandmother was, and now they have totally been stripped of that. And it's like. Was like when Louis trying to talk to him, and then they're like, "We're dead inside. We were his parents." It's like,
my butler's dead.
It's like, shit. Oh, God.
I feel like with Doofus, they probably wanted to use him in Huey's storyline. That would have probably made him a slightly better character. But I guess because they had to do like the three-person thing, they couldn't really do Doofus with that. So they had to, you know, find some way to shove him in.
I don't know. Like, part of me is just like, he's very, very creepy, but part of me really does appreciate this part of the story, even if it was a little off-putting. Let's put it this way: he's basically the Onion of the show. Goddamn Onion.
Onion's not as evil as this, though.
Okay, to be fair, he's not as evil as this. Let's move on to the third segment, which is possibly the least amount going on, but one of the more entertaining segments. Basically, it's Dewey doing a Saturday Night Live sketch. And he even has like the desk with the guests and whatnot, and he basically reenacts everything himself. I don't know. I found this really funny because, like, on the one hand, you could tell he's kind of cracking a little bit. On the other hand, I could definitely see this being like its own little sketch that he does on his own. So I was having fun with it. What do you think, Kat?
Oh yeah, I definitely appreciate the satire and him, trying to do a parody of all these late night shows that are going on. Like it was a lot of fun to watch because I do like watch. I don't watch any particular late night show. I like dropping in on all of them because they each have a merit to them. They each have something interesting about them, and they usually have really good hosts that you can't help but find charming. So I appreciate Hugh. Bleh. I appreciate Dewey trying to sort of do a tribute to all of them all together in his one show. Like, granted, it's still a ripoff. Granted, he's trying to promote it for his own self thing, but it's still a lot of fun to watch. And I do like the Paul Schaefer reference too.
What do you think, Dougbert?
Dougbert. Huh. I liked it a lot. Yeah, no, I watch the occasional talk shows. Like I watched Conan. I watched Late Night with Stephen Colbert and James Corden and a lot of other ones too. But it's oh god, you can basically just list off all the references there. It does kind of show also that Dewey's probably, not as eager to be an only child as he would let on, since his guests are, made up to be Huey and Louie. So it's yeah. And
I love
also,
his impression of his brothers.
Yeah, it's Huey's a robot and Dewey is a lamp. I wonder if Linkara is going to review Louie. But yeah, there's that aspect of he wants to be an only child, but I think he also, doesn't, want to be that separated from his brothers as he lets on. And hell, the fact that he draws his audience as Scrooge, Launchpad, Webby, Huey, and Louie, and I think Mrs. Beakley is very telling of that. And also, I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks it, but I think they're kind of trying to, make a ship for Dewey and Webby, because it seems like they're the ones that spend the most time together.
I mean, I don't know about that, but they do interact.
Well, I did receive confirmation. I heard that the creators have no intention of putting a romance in the story regarding Webby, because they wanted to stress, the importance of family and everything, that was the more important aspect, in regards to her and the boys. I could definitely see it working out between her and Dewey. Like you said, they do spend a lot of time together, and, they seem to interact the best, but, I think it's fine that they don't go the romance route. It doesn't need it. Plus, it kind of makes Webby into that typical trope of, the only girl has to, be hooked up with one of the male characters. So,
yeah.
but it's nice to theorize. It's good shipping fuel. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I'm pretty certain it's never going to happen, but, I still, regardless, appreciate her relationship with Dewey, regardless of the nature of it.
So yeah, this episode had a lot of really good aspects to it, and I think separating it into 3 different characters instead of the A plot and B plot. I think it helped it actually focus more, because each plot definitely seemed to want to set out to do something. And even though each plot was like pretty short, they managed to streamline things in a very good way. So I really appreciated what they did with that. I think this type of episode was needed because it wasn't filler. Like, we've had filler episodes before, but this actually did serve to advance the characters, and the fact that they mentioned Duckworth and stuff like that, like, this is clearly advancing the plot. But I'm wondering if that, because they mentioned Duckworth now, like, we're gonna get continuation on maybe the Spear of Selene or something like that. We really don't get much of anything with that mystery with Della. And they did a great job making us wait with this. Like, if I had to say, like, starting this mid-season with the reveal of the sphere and not telling us anything since then has actually proved to benefit the show, in my opinion, because I'm watching every single episode waiting for one little bit of information. I think that's good for it.
Yeah, like I know my theories about what this episode was going to be were way off from the first one, but I mean, this episode was perfectly fine, without any underlying plot being added to it, and without any mystical element being added to it as well. So, it was still very much enjoyable. Like, I like character pieces like this. They're a lot of fun to watch, and it's fun to see how the boys learn to appreciate each other in different ways. With Huey appreciating the fact that his brothers don't mindlessly follow him, that he just appreciates their companionship and them for who they are. Same way that Louis appreciates his brothers for not being psychopaths that want him to be around constantly. And Dewey appreciating his brothers just for their mere companionship, despite the fact that he wants to be independent but still needs, them around to for help. So, it's a nice little sibling thing. And anybody who has siblings, or even if you don't have siblings, you can appreciate something like this.
All right, Mr. Doug, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, it's one of those where, I think everything's basically been said, so I don't know what more I could add to it. It was a great episode. I really enjoyed it, although I am creeped out by the middle portion. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I don't think, everything needs to be a storyline, because it's like, I feel like I remember watching Teen Titans, the early 2000s version, and how, they would have, storyline episodes, every now and then, most of it was filler up until you got to, the really big episodes. And it's like, yeah, these are fine. I don't mind having, filler like this, and then, we get, big episodes every now and then. It does kind of, whet your appetite. So, yeah, I've been cool with basically how they've been, handling the show.
Honestly, I really have enjoyed this episode, filler or not, whether it advances the storyline or not. My complaints in the first half of the season were merely that they weren't very good filler episodes. And, it didn't really do much for me in that regard. But this is really good. These episodes have really gotten much more tightly focused, much better written. The jokes are on point. I'm happy with everything. Honestly, I think this half of the season has been fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. But if I don't know immediately, I'm fine in this regard.
I just want to point out a bit of dark referential humor in. I wasn't going to talk about this before, but I just wanted to point out real quick about during the Dewey segment where you see he creates that makeshift band. You see that he has a caveman skeleton in the background. That is actually a reference to a character they added in the second season of the original show called Bubba. like, there was a 5-part episode arc where they go back in time and they bring back a cave duck named Bubba, who speaks in this really annoying dialect, and he ends up staying in the present, and he's there for, like, the remaining seasons of the show. Like, he's probably a character I find as much annoying as I did Launchpad and Doofus. And the fact that their reference to him is showing, like, his grown-up dead body, I find a little comical. Sort of the same way that they showed the Quacky Patch doll in the first episode nailed against the wall. It's like, tell us how you really feel, guys.
All right, with all of that being said, I am Zenith Rule.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Doug Macberrie.
And Doug is now fired. We will see you guys next time for another episode of Diving Into DuckTales. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, guys.
This has been Dewey Tonight. Dewey Tonight. To TFN. Ta-ta for now.
Thanks for listening to my only podcast. Woohoo!
And just remember that Doug is now always fired. Even when he's not, he is just always fired.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.